He's here tonight following the release earlier this year of his latest album entitled Assume Form. Would you please welcome James Blake?
Hi there. Can't see you.
They'll make themselves known.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
Got it.
I want to start. I want to start with the new record, and then we'll kind of see where the conversation goes. Can you give me a little sense, because this record is a little different, I think, in many respects, looking at your past catalog. Where were you creatively as you went into this record? What was in your mind?
I was a bit fed up because I think I'd spent a lot of time making music for other people and felt overstretched and I think I needed to remind myself of what I do and make my own statement.
Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, also excited because I had all these new people I'd worked with who,
yes,
some of whom ended up collaborating on the record, and it was like an exciting centering of myself. I think.
You've talked about you've done many collaborations with all manner of artists. And it seems to me, both reading and listening, that cuts both ways. In that, the collaborations are, kind of an experience for you to step outside what you're doing and work with different artists. But also, the downside is you're not giving away, but you're certainly giving a lot of yourself to those collaborations. Right. So at what point did you decide, you know what, I need to do my thing?
November.
Last November.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened in November?
I just had a moment where I felt a little bit out at sea, I think, artistically.
Yeah.
Because I think there's been so much positivity brought from collaborating with others and working on other people's records, but at a certain point, I have an urge to make my own thing, and it wasn't a reflection on anyone else or anyone I worked on. It was more just, the feeling came back to go and do that. So yeah.
I'm often fascinated by titles. And why artists title things certain ways. Tell me about Assume Form. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, the song itself was at the time was my favorite song on the record. So I just, and I liked over my career, there's been a kind of running theme of coming into the foreground from being a producer who makes a certain kind of electronic music or whatever, and then adding little bits of my voice in, and I think people could just about hear that it might be me, but no one had heard me sing until Limit Your Love, and then I just went there, and lots of people were very angry.
You think?
Yeah, my mum was very happy, but a lot of people were very angry. Yeah, because I think when people know you for a certain thing, and then you're a producer and you make all these beats and stuff, and you start singing, it's a bit like it's a reveal, and with every reveal comes some kind of risk, So you risk turning people off, and I think I did some, but then others came for that.
Sure.
And then as my career progressed, it just became my focus shifted to songwriting and to varying degrees of success. And I think if the Assume Form was anything, it was not only a kind of songwriting, a version of some kind of songwriting clarity, but also just emotional clarity, and you know, you know, to put it bluntly, it came from the wreckage of an emotional break, you know, really a breakdown, and led out into, you know, I think there's elements of me, we're all still figuring it out, but that was, you know, it was the most clear I'd felt in a long time. So it was a good time to make an album.
Yeah, and you've talked about it's interesting talking about emotional clarity, because you talked about this as, you know, this might be the least cool way to write about love in 2019. And it kind of unpack that a little bit for us.
So that's something I said, by the way. That's not something he's just saying. I heard someone go, "What?" You're right. I was right.
Yes.
It
yes.
Is,
no, you were right.
I am right. It's not that cool. What it is that I think there is a trend of music that I think capitalizes on our loneliness, in terms of making it seem cooler to not be in love and not to even pursue love, than it is to, you know, there's been a shift, I think a romantic shift, and that's all to do with, I think, necessarily the market. And I think you know, until there are certain songs that in previous times I've not really connected to, based on the fact that they were just too loving as songs, and I just couldn't get my head around it because I just wasn't in love in that way. And then I think something shifted in the relationship I'm in currently, and I just think that I was no longer concerned with how sort of current my way of writing about love was. And there's not it's not a judgment on anybody else or the way anybody else writes or anything. It's just that I like the idea of not trying to, you know, love's not a lifestyle. It's like it's just you know,
you're either in it or out.
It's a very pure thing.
Yes. Yes.
And so I wanted to write about it as purely as I could, and I felt frustrated when I listened to a lot of things that were current. But then I also felt a little bit like I wasn't part of a conversation that maybe it would be cooler if I was part of that conversation, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's hard to put this very frankly.
Yeah.
Basically,
but you were
without, you know, saying
you,
some shit.
Yeah, well, which you're allowed to here, but you were feeling, you know, somewhat outside the way in which love has been referenced, certainly currently in music. I read, and I was fascinated by this, that you had spent some time listening to Harry Nilsson,
who by the way does this perfectly,
better than anybody.
Yeah, totally,
better than anybody. Tell me what inspires you about Harry Nilsson and about the way he approached it.
There's a kind of innocuous, kind of childlike wonder at love that Harry Nilsson has, I think, in some of his songs. And then some, you know, there's some like hurt and some, you know, some ways he just feels very raw. Feels like he's very at the surface, and like things affected him in a deep way, and so you hear that coming out. I feel the same way about Don McLean as well. And yeah, I mean, in that era, you could say someone like Joni Mitchell was more sort of sardonic about like more cynical about love.
Yes,
not always completely, but right. There's like a humor about it which I like as well,
and a remove.
Yeah,
like a certain distance.
Yeah, like, you know, a self-protectiveness.
Yes,
which was fair. You know,
right.
Is fair if that's how you feel, but it was yeah. So I like a mixture of the two.
Yeah. But Harry Nilsson,
which I think Harry Nilsson has.
Yeah.
I think he's got a mixture of the two.
But he was in it. You when you heard him sing, you felt like he was in it.
Yeah, totally.
You know, in one way or another. I want to get your take on this because you've been referred to in various corners as a modern pop star. Whatever that might mean. Go with me on this. Because and the question really is, do you think pop really is a genre anymore? That because artists come to music in many different ways. I recently had a discussion with the young artist Maggie Rogers, who has a very strong feeling that genre is really a construct to sell music. It is not a description of a creative pursuit.
I think that's probably true. I mean, it's not. The evidence of that is that when you're actually writing music, you're not thinking about a genre.
Yeah. But, go with that.
Yeah. So, but in terms of like pop stars, I think I was just straight away after you asked that question, I sort of had a little moment of like self-analysis. Why would I like wince? And I think that the reason is not because I don't think that being a pop star is great. I just when I was growing up, pop stars didn't look like I don't have the kind of confidence of image and confidence of self, I think, that I notice in pop stars. So like, bit too tall, was never really that confident about the way I looked. Kind of don't see myself as being image focused, which for the majority of my life, pop stars have been, whether they wanted to be or not.
Yeah.
And I think, and whether, it's more an industry thing really. Mm-hmm. And I guess there are certain things that go with being a pop star, like a life that goes with that.
Yeah.
Which I think you either sign up to. Some people in the past have maybe had a massive hit and then they just turn into a pop star in a way, like kind of like a Lil Nas X of the 70s.
Yes. Right. Right.
Whose personality doesn't always seem like they are a pop star, but they are now. Not personality, but you know what I mean. Like
Kind of, but I mean, sometimes it's thrust upon artists. They don't necessarily pursue it.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the thing is, I've not pursued that. But then, when you don't do certain things, when you don't promote yourself as much as pop stars do, less people hear it. Mm. So there's always a compromise. Yeah. There's always like a balance to be found.
And the other the other interesting challenge, I think, is sometimes if you don't define who you are, others will do it for you, and a lot of times they get it wrong.
True. And that's something I have found as well, because I think partially my fault, but I think that my mystique and my mystery around my career and stuff maybe doesn't represent me as an actual human being, as a person. I think it normally just suffices. I'm going to compare myself to Putin now.
It's okay.
So you're going to have to figure out.
We'll go with it.
Go with me. Yeah. Uncomfortable with being likened to a pop star, but not Putin. So, he feels like someone who a lot of people projected what they wanted in somebody onto. And I think that without showing too much of his own personality, that was able to happen. And I think that is a prerequisite of pop music. And I think, if anything, that might be the thing that's changing now, is that people actually want to know what you're like.
Yeah.
And I think that may be coinciding with me not really wanting to be a mystery anymore. And so if that means that I fit in some way into that box, then I'm fine with that.
And coming back to assume form, there is more of you in this.
Yeah.
And totally. It's more and correct me if I'm wrong about this, or I want to get your take on this. It seems as if you're being more direct. Yeah. There's less reliance on metaphor.
Yes, totally. Some of it's quite on the nose. It's like, which is, I mean, in terms of songwriting, I remember hearing criticism of Joni Mitchell, like a write-up that basically said, she just talks about everything like it's, it's like a literal description of it almost,
right.
Or like a courtroom sort of description.
Mm.
But here we are,
Yeah.
How many years later, thinking that that's genius.
Yeah,
So
but she also said, great thing about Joni Mitchell, famous quote of hers, where she was talking about songwriting, and she said, if you're listening to my music and you're thinking about me, Joni, then I'm not doing my job. If you're listening to my music and hearing yourself and your story, then I'm getting somewhere.
Interesting.
I love that quote.
I love her.
Yeah. Anyway, you've had a couple of rather remarkable kind of creative collaborations. One with Kendrick and Beyonce, and I'm wondering now with a little bit of hindsight, what have you taken away from those experiences?
Well, the Kendrick thing was funny. I took away a Grammy, and I didn't really expect that.
And here at the Grammy Museum, we're glad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting that at all. I went to because I was performing at them with Travis.
Yes.
And in the car on the way there, I found out that I'd won it. I'd won one.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what.
I didn't know what for. Telecast. Yeah.
I didn't know what I'd been. I had no idea.
You didn't know you'd been nominated?
No, because I didn't know that I didn't really know that they gave out Grammys to like featuring artists, and I didn't know that. Not to do myself down, but the part I have on that song is a very small part. Mm-hmm. So I did well, and
clearly enough to get you a Grammy though.
And it's for best rap performance. So,
how much do you like looking at that on your mantle?
It's
James Blake for best rap performance.
A lot.
Speaking of collaborators, so there's any number of collaborators on this record. Before I get into who they are, do we have water for James somewhere?
Can I have a? Yeah, is that all right? Oh, thank you.
Now we have audience members grabbing water for the artist.
That is so sweet of you.
This is
thank
fantastic.
I appreciate both of you.
I wish I had known
Both
about this like only about 10 years ago. Could have gotten a lot of help. Tell me about how you choose collaborators. What makes you interested in working with somebody?
What made me interested in working with Beyonce?
Well, that I could sort of make up on my own, but
No. I mean, there are certain people whose music I've listened to growing up, and Andre, great example.
Yeah. Well, I want to go into him in detail.
Absolutely.
Actually,
there are certain people who resonate with me on a wavelength that I can't always explain.
Yeah.
Beyonce is an example of someone who was just always in my head from when I was 15 almost. I think I was the boy in my class whose first record was Writings on the Wall, which at the time wasn't the most, I got taken the piss out of for having that, mostly by my male friends. And I listened to a lot of like D'Angelo at that time and Lauryn Hill, and so there's like a few artists who've stayed in my, and then things my dad was playing at home, Crosby, Stills and Nash and Joni and all these other people. So I had a few people that would, and Kendrick put his Section 8. He put a few records out while I was in university, going into my first record and second record, and I just would listen at home. And this was during a particularly stoned era. where I would analyze every lyric the same way you can imagine any stoner, like just going in, like micro analyzing Kendrick Lamar
I
lyrics.
have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. And me and my friends would just do that, like of an evening, rather than, I didn't buy a TV in the house I bought, and I bought this stereo system and just listened to vinyl every day. And actually, it's remarkable how quickly you adapt to doing that. Like, I really grew up with technology and as a part of my life, but when I got rid of the TV, and it was such a pleasure to just sit and listen to a record with my friends. It became my entire kind of recreational home life.
Yes.
And so that was where I guess some of these people, Bon Iver, Kendrick, like some of these people's records were just coming through this system.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just abused those vinyl.
Yeah. Tell me about when you first were introduced to Andre 3000 and Outkast.
Outkast had this really early on for me, like an intrigue that, I mean, culturally speaking, you got to understand, like, I'm from this suburb of London where we were just not hearing any music like that. Like, the kind of music that we were hearing was like the Libertines, like what was on even the cool music that people listened to was all rock or indie or whatever. And I just had already got a background in some of this kind of slightly, I pretty much got into hip hop through the song with Redman on Voodoo. That's when I pretty much first heard rap, and then it was Wu-Tang, then it was, so it was like a logical progression. And then hearing this thing from Atlanta that I had no idea, it was just completely confusing at the time. And I became just obsessed with the production, and I'd already taken cue from someone like Timbaland, and then here was this whole new production style, all these chords that, I mean, amazing chords in Outkast tracks, and Pink and Blue was my favorite song for ages, and then there was like, I just fell in love. And
tell me about working. He's on this record. Where's the Catch? Yeah. He's on this record. Tell me about working with him, and that experience of it's one thing to admire an artist and to kind of pick apart their music a little bit. Another thing entirely to kind of get to work with them and see their process. Yeah. What made that special for you?
I was quite surprised that he wanted to do it, actually, because even though I had this, up until this point, like a 9-year career, I felt established, but in a way, I mean, he hadn't really heard of me, I don't think, until I was introduced to him via Corey Blacksmith, who's Vince Staples' manager, and he said he was working with him, and he just, he'd played Andre a couple of the things that I made, and for Vince, and off the Prima Donna EP, and I obviously was really excited that he'd done that. And then I think he was just intrigued. It was just different to what he was used to hearing, and then he came into the studio, Conway, and just I hit him with about 30 pieces of music. I just kept playing stuff, and he was like, "Oh wow!"
Just instrumental pieces.
Just instrumental stuff, like stuff that he might be interested in. A couple of things that I'd made, but I don't think at the time he didn't know I sing. He didn't know I sang, and he didn't really know about my career as an artist myself. He just thought I was a producer that wanted to work with him. Yeah. So very slowly it became eventually he realized, and then I wasn't pushy with it. I was just like, let's just do you. Yeah. And like, I wasn't trying to bring my thing into it. And then at a certain point, I was like, oh, by the way, I'm working on this album. Do you want to rap on it? So yeah, I picked my moment. Yeah. But I was also surprised because for him to do that on someone relatively not that well known at the time, and also
and not well known to him per se.
Well, yeah, mainly to him, and yeah, Yeah. I guess but even then, like the standing in a for someone like that, like I hadn't graced his world at that point, and I just it was remarkable to me. It was a thing of no, I'm just gonna. And if you notice with all of his other features, it's like he'll just rap or sing on what he likes. It's not about clout. It's not about who is doing the biggest numbers. It's just like he just wants to be on music he likes, which is increasingly rare.
Yeah. One of the things that I think sets him apart a little bit, particularly in that world, is he's been very open about depression and about battling depression, and you
I don't
deal.
want to talk about it. And I'm joking.
You deal with mental health issues on the record. There's a track called "Don't Miss It."
Yeah.
And I'm wondering to the extent that you see and hear what an artist like Andre 3000 is doing in terms of being vulnerable in that sense. How does that affect you?
I didn't hear Andre talk about mental health until after we did the song.
Huh.
But I now realize that he's actually talked about it quite a bit in magazines and things like that, which I'm incredibly fond of. I think it makes me feel closer to him as an artist and as a person. And it made our chemistry on the song better because he knew how I felt.
Yeah.
And he, I came to him with the concept and just said to him, this is about finding some kind of semblance of happiness, but being so distrusting of it that it feels like the hammer's going to fall at any moment.
Yeah. And
he took that and wrote the most mind-boggling poem about it. If you honestly, I don't know if any of you know if you've ever looked up the lyrics to his verse, but it's I think it's one of his best verses ever, and that's saying I've got a mixtape of just his verses cut out of every other song that he's ever been on. So I'm saying that as a discerning Andre 3000 fan.
Yes.
I feel like that's one of his best. If you just go and look at the wordplay, because sometimes when someone's rapping, the sound of what they're saying masks quite how clever what they're saying is sometimes, just because it could be the pace of the song or whatever. It's fucking genius. It's genius, and I couldn't ever have put it like that, and I was just happy to,
Yeah. I want to ask about a couple other collaborations on the record. There's a Spanish singer, Rosalia.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for Rosalia. Initially, what inspired you about her music?
Her voice.
Her voice.
Yeah, but I mean, I heard Los Angeles, her first record.
Oh, yeah.
And that's still something I play to people when I want to impress them. Like, not impress them about my great music taste, but about just impress them with some music. Give them something they're going to want to go home and listen and look up themselves.
Right.
That's one of the first things I'll ever play.
True that you had not met her before you went into the studio?
No, she just came in and we just instantly got on. It was really easy. It was like a younger sister or something. It was just great.
Huh.
Yeah, it was easy. And then I just played her a couple of things. I played her, I can't remember what the other thing I played her was, but anyway, I ended up playing her the instrumentals of Barefoot in the Park.
It prompts the question, well, she just came in and we figured out there's a little more to it than just that. What makes you a good collaborator? Why are you able to do that?
I think I wasn't able always to do that. I think over the course of my 20s, I became a consumer narcissist. Which I think is like the disease of our generation, but that is hugely happened to me, based on many things. But I mean, I'm an only child. Became kind of relatively famous at 21, touring all the time, never having to be. It's like my whole world centered around me for a long time. And I think at a certain point, when that bubble bursts and you try to bring yourself to the world, and you try and figure out what is actually important, and you realize that your contribution to someone else, maybe taking care of someone else, is the greatest thing that can happen to you. I think my relationship changed the way I interacted with other people, and therefore how I collaborated. And I think that, as was the case with Andre, he was, an incredibly excited person, just trying not to overstep, like just trying to just let him, because really initially I was just making music, trying to make music for him. Yeah. And we worked together on some stuff, and some of it ended up on the Travis Scott record, but basically I was just trying to give him space. And I think that I learnt a lot of that from Rick as well, Rick Rubin, who really would go with me down any road I wanted to creatively, and just kind of sat back and just let things happen. And I think that is all of it, really. I think it's like the progression from like everything being about me in my own life to everything being about someone else. Yeah. And then realizing that sometimes the best way of producing is not by being interventional. Which is the thing that I've heard, Rick Rubin, he like sits back and just watches what, people have criticized him before, and it worked for me. Like it's like almost like a therapist, where like, I actually don't do that kind of therapy, but talk therapy where, you just talk and they go, okay, and how did that make you feel? Yeah. And you go, well, I guess I felt this way and this way and this way, and then they go, And you're like, what the fuck am I paying for? But then you actually do, in some way.
You do come
to
you
contribute more, and you end up becoming, you end up in some way.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that, because some of the great songwriters, current songwriters that I've talked to, whether it's Julia Michaels or Justin Tranter, these people have written, big hits with all manner of artists. One of the things universally that they explain is that the first thing they do is sit down and talk to the artist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just have a conversation.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Me and Andre spoke for a day before we made any music, and that was the best part of it.
What'd you talk about?
All of it was the best part.
I mean, not betraying any confidences, but what was the nature of the conversation?
Just, we've got some similar experiences. There are some things that we totally relate on, and like what he's talking about in the song is real.
Yes.
So we talked about that. Yes. We talked about his experiences and our, things we agree on about the music industry and about, and life and what we're doing to better our lives, and how, it's like we both came at it at a funnily similar place, which was nice.
In the time we have left, I want to roll the videotape back a little bit and talk a little about.
Oh, I was like,
yeah.
Okay.
Everyone, I use that metaphor all the time. I should stop doing it because people think we actually have a videotape. Talk a little bit about when you were young, the music you remember hearing growing up. I know you were classically trained. But talk a little bit about the pop music of the day. What were you hearing?
There's a funny, like, we'll roll the tape right back. There's a video. I think it's an audio recording that my mum took on this old tape player of me singing in the bath when I was 2 years old, and I was singing sitting on the dock of the bay, but I couldn't say a lot of the words. So, but what I was doing, what was really strange about it was that when I listen to the tape back, it's like I keep doing it. It's not like a kid just singing a song he's heard. It's like practicing the song until it's right, and for like 20 minutes, just going like just until I got it.
Until
right.
You got it.
And that is a weird thing to, because no one taught me how to do that. Like no one was. No one was like, okay, if you just keep, there was no reason to practice something at 2 years old.
Right.
That's a note to parents. There's no need to practice something at 2 years old. Yeah. Sorry, I haven't totally not answered your question at all.
Yeah, that's okay. As I mentioned, classically trained.
I told you I was a narcissist.
Yeah. Ever was there an interest in pursuing classical music as a career?
There was, but I had that well and truly discouraged out of me. Not by my parents. I mean, they wanted me to learn classically, and my dad is a guitarist and singer, and like he wanted me to learn classically because he hadn't. It's that kind of, he wanted me to have the education he didn't have, and I appreciated that, but I found my personality didn't really fit with playing other people's music. I mean, saying that, obviously I love covering certain things, but like in terms of note for note, just basically repeating it in exactly the way. And I know that at a certain level of classical music, you get to a point where you can add your own flavor to a classical piece, but I wasn't there yet. So I just got frustrated and didn't really want to do it.
Yeah.
And also, I felt kind of rejected by the sort of classical side of my school. And I think that it felt rigid, and I wasn't really, I was always considered too much of a kind of like, out on my own, like some sort of renegade. And I know that sounds cool in a way, but it didn't feel cool. It felt sad, because I just wanted to be part of this thing. I wanted to be in the orchestra. I wanted to be in. It never really worked out, but there was this thing. You were able to. There was a music tie. We had a sports tie and a music tie. We had ties in our school, and they never gave me a music tie. And I was like, what have I got to do? Who have I got to, And they gave me. They were like, no, you have to be in the orchestra. I was like, but I tried to be in the orchestra and you just wouldn't let me be in it. So didn't get my music tie. Which I'm still fucking pissed off about. As I'm still bringing it up now. This here, for some reason, why the fuck am I talking about?
This is still a bit of a burn. Was there an artist or a band that you heard when you were young that so, kind of changed your thinking about music that you said, yep, that's what I want to do?
Yeah. Well, initially my dad.
Your dad?
Yeah, my dad. Because he was, he was recording himself, when I was young.
Yeah.
He was one of the first people in England who had a home recording studio. So basically I was around, I didn't know how to use it and I didn't really care, but I heard him making these songs. I actually, Where to Turn, which ended up being the Wilhelm Scream, I had covered his song Where to Turn. That song had been floating around my house for 5 years. He'd been working on it on and off. And so that's why I covered that song, because it was just something that was buried deep in my psyche.
Yeah.
So him, and I think Stevie Wonder, probably.
That's a good one.
Because I mean, there was a discography that was so sort of grandiose that I could just get into it over the years that I was growing up. So when I first heard him, it was like, Isn't She Lovely, and all these songs, and then it just became, 10 years later I'm listening to Secret Life of Plants, and before that it's Fulfilling This First Finale, and before that is In Square Circle, and before that it's my favourite song was Love Didn't Need to Love Today. I know every sort of Stevie Wonder song back to front, and I didn't need to cut out all his verses because they were all just him.
Yeah, and great.
Yeah,
and great. Inspiration to when you started to kind of develop your own voice. When what was the spark that caused you to start writing your own music? Because you had this whole thing going, in clubs and doing, the DJ thing and sort of arranging and producing and putting things together. What changed?
That was composition for me. I think the thing is that if anything, where my mind went to, the idea of pre-writing was me just playing covers of other people. I remember this time when I was singing, what's that song? I believe the children are the future. Teach them well.
Whitney
let
Houston?
them lead the way. Yeah, I remember
Is
saying.
that Whitney Houston?
So I'd play CDs in my house.
Yeah.
In my bedroom, and I'd play really loudly to them. But it was one day I had the window open, and this guy who lived four doors down from me, heard me singing, and it was bad. It was bad. It was bad. To be fair to him, it was bad. But he didn't speak to me again after that. I was a bit sad. But yeah, no. So I'd do that. I'd come home and do that every day.
Yeah.
And so that's how I learnt to articulate. Be listening to like Mariah Carey or someone who's really good at all the scales and all the runs and stuff like that. So, and then, how to harmonize was just, me and my parents would drive down, because we never really went on holiday to foreign places, because it was expensive. We'd go to the seaside, drive down, take a tent, stay in Pembrokeshire maybe, or and on the way we'd sing harmonies. They taught me how to do harmonies in the car. Wow. Yeah, like 3-part harmonies. So they'd do, or if we were ever singing Happy Birthday to one of my mum or dad or me, then they'd be doing it in
the 3-part harmony.
Well, they'd do it in 2-part, and then if you were feeling particularly happy, then you'd join in. So that's how I kind of learned how to do the stuff. And then I think in terms of writing, it was like playing other people's songs wasn't enough for me. I think that's what it was. It's like, I love doing that, but it wasn't scratching the itch. Emotionally. I think it was something where I needed to find the thing to represent how I felt, and it wasn't always in someone else's song.
So just a couple more questions. One, you've moved to Los Angeles now. You're living here in sunny Southern California.
Yep.
How does environment affect you creatively?
I think Los Angeles genuinely made me happier. It's hard to explain without resorting to kind of woo-woo kind of energy language. Yeah. But
people here like the woo-woo energy language.
There's a resonance to the geography here. That's scientific. And I think there's a reason why so many artists come here. There's also a reason why so many artists originate in London and Manchester and Liverpool and all these places. But there's something different about California, and I think there's a history of English artists moving here and just making their way. And there's something about it. I don't know. I felt relaxed every time I came here, and eventually I realised that I was happiest when I was here. And when I went back to England, I realised that had gone away. And so there was a point in my life where I said, anything that makes me happier is what I'm going to do. I don't care what it is or how small. And so I did it. I moved because my girlfriend came here.
Yeah. It's a good reason too.
I actually told her I was coming. When we first met, she was like, "I'm moving to." I had no plans to move here. She was like, "I'm moving to LA soon." And I thought, well, I'm not going to be in with a shot if I don't say I'm moving to.
I'm coming too.
So I was like, yeah, me too. Yeah.
So. We've all done this in one form or another. So last question. I mentioned in the open that you won the Mercury Prize in 2013, and we talked about the Grammy Award, obviously. But I'm wondering, what does that kind of recognition mean to you?
Put a whole lot of pressure on me.
How so?
Well, because I won it for a song and an album that was represented by a song that became a kind of spectre over the next 5 years of my life. And so in a way it was amazing because, I finally got this approval that I was so hungry for. And then It was had a weird effect. It was like, I mean, it was great, and then once the noise dies down, you've just got this thing that you've achieved, and you're like, every time you write, it's there. Every time you come to articulate your emotion, it's there, with a looming reminder of the time you best expressed your emotion. Do you want that when you're in the studio? But on the other, there's pros and cons to that kind of thing. Yeah. So fingers crossed I don't win one of these things for Assume Form.
Well, all I can say is that the new record is terrific.
Thank you.
It's called Assume Form. We're so pleased that you took the time to join us tonight. I know myself and these folks here would like to hear a little music. So, ladies and gentlemen, James Blake.
Thank you.